Naked is a graphic memoir. And right from the very beginning of the book, from the earliest pages, you make it clear that you're like really going to put yourself out there on the page. Like there's a lot of you on every page of this 200 plus page graphic novel. What made you want to tell your story for this project?
It's kind of funny how that project started. Like at first when I began, I didn't think it was ever going to be published and like seen by as many people as it has. It started like as a project in university. I've drawn comics all my life basically, and I wanted to try in one of my drawing classes to do like the longest comic I've ever drawn before. At first, I thought it was going to be like a 25-page project and I didn't know what to write about. So I went on Google and I wrote how to write a story. And like the advice everyone gives you is like, write what you know. So I thought, what do I know better than my own life? And I thought at first, I thought I just wanted to do like a recollection of like funny or embarrassing sex stories and just
Mm-hmm.
like we all have them, and like to me it's really really funny. And it kind of, as I was drawing it, it kind of ended up going into very like deep emotional raw places that I didn't expected it to go. And then I finished the project for that class, and COVID hit. I lost my job. uh a bunch of my friends also lost their jobs. I had one of my friends, she didn't have anything to do and she wanted me to send her all the projects I've done in university. I sent her those 25 pages and she told me, "Oh my God, like that's so amazing." Like I cried reading it. I was really bummed out when I saw it was over. Like, I mean, you lost your job. Don't you think it would be cool to like work on that project? And I was like, I didn't even think of that. And I was like, I mean, instead of just like scrolling on TikTok all day, I might actually have a project. Then I sent it to Pow Pow after like being heavily encouraged by a lot of my friends. And I didn't think they would pick it up at all because I was like, I mean, that was so like created in like it wasn't like a organized way. And to me, it was kind of like all deconstructed and stuff, but Pow Pow ended up loving it. And I finished it in 2020 and we published it a year ago in 2022. Yeah, it got published.
Exactly. And then you did your own translation into English, right?
Yes, I did. Which
Very cool.
now that I've done it, I'm happy I did it, but I don't think I would do that again. Like, well, first of all, I learned that like you're supposed to translate to your mother tongue, which I didn't know. And after doing it, it made a lot of sense. I feel like it's a good experience to have tried it once. I was afraid that some of the jokes would get lost in translation, and some passages I really had a specific idea how I wanted it to be in English, but I don't think I would do that again. It's translation is very tricky.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. I think it comes out really well in the end. I think you did a good job, and I think it's clear to the reader that you're very comfortable, like in both languages and everything like that. So I don't think I don't think that's a problem, as it were.
Thank you so much. I'm also really happy with the translation. I think the jokes work really well, both in French and in English. I had to redraw those some panels because some French expressions don't exist in English. So I had to like tweak that, which was really fun actually to like realize, I guess.
Right, the learning process with it.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly.
As you mentioned, the story, there's a lot of like really funny stories. There's like lots of like goofy humor, but then you end up delving pretty deeply into, like some sad, very serious, and even like traumatic stories from your youth. Did you find it was a challenge to balance those kind of tones or atmospheres in the book?
Honestly, not really. I think the book is very similar to my own personality, which like I love laughing, I love making jokes, but I'm also a very open person. Like I always say like I don't have secrets because I just share everything. And I think for me, it actually made it a lot easier to talk about those harder or more sensitive subjects by using humor. Just
Mhm.
like I watched a interview of Phoebe Waller-Bridge yesterday, and she said something that I thought was really good and kind of sort of links to my book a little bit. She says, because she also, like in Fleabag and on her plays and TV shows and all that stuff, in a lot of her writing, she touches on very harsh subjects, and she says, like, you use humor so that your public like lowers their defenses, and after that you punch them in the face. I really related to that, which I don't think I did it on purpose, but when she mentioned it, I was like, oh my God, that's what I do too. As I said earlier, I didn't think that was ever going to be read by an actual public. So it was more of like a journaling experience.
Right.
It was very therapeutic for me to talk about it. And now that people do read it, it really doesn't bother me, because I've made peace with all of the stories that I share. I have, like, for example, I have some stories that I'm still, stuff that I've done, stuff that has happened to me that I'm very embarrassed about still. And I just didn't talk about that in the book, because I think it would be unfair for me. And the stories that I do share, I feel like they don't belong to me anymore, because they're out there, which is actually very nice and like kind of empowering in a way. But yeah.
Right. It's like you process it and you also almost exercise it from your mind. You're like, now that demon is out of me and I can let it go or something.
Literally. And it's like it's like all those stories are like exteriorized. I don't know if that's a word. It's like, yeah, it's just they don't belong to me. And even when it's funny, I reread my book after I finished the English translation, and it's funny, there's some stories that I reread, and like I've read that book maybe 150 times, if not more. And there's some stories that I forget that happened to me. And I don't know if it's because I've really let go of all that stuff, or if it's just I have a terrible memory. But it actually really helped me to put them out there.
Right.
Like not my baggage anymore.
You foisted it off on the world. Now everyone else can manage it.
None of my business.
So it doesn't sound like it, but you weren't nervous at all to put some of the stories out there, because, you know, for people who haven't read it, it's very much like a mature reader's book, and it's dealing with sexuality and all kinds of like quote unquote embarrassing or nervous situations. There's even a great moment where your mom is talking to you in the comic. She's like, I love you, sweetie, but just don't do a comic about this, you know? And did you ever feel nervous, or was it more just, it was just natural for you to put put your story out there into the world?
I love that you mentioned that joke. I think it's the best joke of the entire book. I'm like so proud of that joke, which that moment really happened, by the way. Like we had that exact conversation with my mom. I think, like I said earlier, I'm a very open person. I find a lot of empowerment about talking about those harsher subjects. Like I talk about like being sterile, and I remember when I was younger, I was so embarrassed of that fact. And when I started sharing it, and that I had like positive reactions from people, and that I had support and validation, I remember that being like the first event that I like stopped hiding, and that I just wanted, because I had such like a positive reaction from people, I just wanted to share it with more people to get even more positive reinforcement, you know? And I think maybe it's a little bit the same with my book. Like all the stories I share, I'm not ashamed of anymore. And by sharing them, I get validation from more and more and more people, which helps me in return like feel even more confident in like the events that have happened in my life, and like more confident as like a woman and as an adult. Also, when I started university, I started like an Instagram page where I shared like short comics in like panel forms, like maybe 10 panel max. And when I started doing my book, it had been like 5 years that I've had that Instagram, and those comics were talked a lot about my personal life, very close to what I actually did in the book. So I think and I already had a lot of positive interactions from those comics. That Instagram page was very successful. And I think that just like slowly make me feel more and more comfortable about sharing my life. And every time I got like negative feedback, it was really stupid stuff that I
Right.
took seriously. Like a lot of people were very angry, and to this day are very angry that I draw my characters with leg hair. But like I can't, like I can't take that seriously. Like to me, that criticism has like no legs to stand on. So I'm just like, okay. So I almost only get positive reactions. And also I think I'm a pretty confident
Mm,
person. And like even if I got really terrible feedback, which I haven't gotten yet, or if I had, I haven't seen it, I'm like, I mean, you're allowed to not like that. And it doesn't change who I am. It doesn't change my value as a person. Another thing I think that's important to mention is that I kind of touched on it a bit earlier, is that all the stories I talk about in my book are things that I have made peace with and that I am no longer embarrassed about, or that I no longer feel shame about. So that's why I'm able to share them. Because like if you're still ashamed of an event, like it's impossible to like share it with a bunch of strangers.
mm,
Or I feel would be very like bad for your healing to share it with strangers, because not only you have to heal, but you also have to heal thinking about like, oh my god, like everyone's judging me like the same way I'm judging myself.
hmm
Does that random person in the bus has that random person in the bus read my book? Like when people come up for like for me to sign their books, I would just be so ashamed because I would know that they have read it and that they know like my dirty secrets. So it's like everything I've made peace with, so like I'm good for people to know. I even think it's pretty funny everything that I share. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, you'll have more material for the sequel when you get around to it.
Maybe.
Or not. That's your choice.
I hope not, because like I'm in a really good place right now, and like my book talks about like Ella was sad in that book, so I hope I don't get more material for the book. I probably will though, but hope
So
not.
it sounds like you got a lot of practice like working on Instagram and social media, like doing short comics. Like I think one of the first things people are going to notice when they read the book is that you have a pretty distinctive visual style. You know, there's not too many artists out there that I'm reminded of when I look at your work. You have a very unique way of drawing faces and drawing bodies, and everything in the book, in the graphic novel Naked, is done in these kind of tones of pink and blue that overlap. What was your approach to, number one, your visual art style in general, and number two, anything in particular with Naked?
I mean, I think um through my Instagram page, it really helped me develop my visual style. It's really nice actually. I like Instagram for that as an artist, that you can go back and see like the evolution. Like if you see like what I posted 5 years ago, it's similar, but it's so different. Like the first comics I did, I didn't even have an iPad, so I would draw everything in India ink, then take pictures, like edit them horribly, then post them on my Instagram. I think a lot of my inspiration for drawing, or like how I figured out my style, also came from other artists I
Mm,
found on Instagram. Like some names that just come up on the top of my head is Sonia Lazo, which she is like insane. Like she is like the social media queen. Like she understands Instagram. Because what's hard about being an artist today is that you have to be a social media manager and an artist. And she's not only like this amazing, she has this amazing visual style. Her style is very strong, but she's also like very good at broadcasting herself.
okay.
Um, she does little triangle nose, and I really like that. So like I took that from her, and they slowly became more like nose shape. There's also Francis Cannon. They're a Australian illustrator, and I'd say for them it's more like their themes that really inspired me. They talk a lot about their queerness and like their relationship with their body, their relationship with their femininity, and those are like the two names that come up on the top of my head right now, but they really inspired me. I've never really been scared of like taking what I like in other artists and putting it in my own art, because I know that eventually, first of all, I don't really believe in copying in art, because I think we don't, like, of course it happens, but I mean in like styles and stuff, I don't really believe that's a thing, because eventually it's going to become your own. Just like I said with Sonia Lazo's like triangle noses, like you can't say today that like we draw our noses the same. Maybe we used to at one point, but like I made it my own and she's made it her own as well. And I'm sure that like she took inspiration from someone else, like they took inspiration from someone else. And I actually think that's a very powerful thing in art. Like when I see some, it's pretty rare that it happens, but it has happened a couple of times on Instagram where other artists tag me in their work and they say that they redrew one of my drawings, or like they're super, they heavily inspire their style from my style, and I never get like angry or frustrated,
Mm.
because that would just make me a hypocrite, because I've done the same thing. And I actually find it incredible that I can be someone else's Sonia Lazo, you know, like for me, that's like the best compliment ever. I feel like I've strayed really far from your question. I don't really remember the question. But
No, that was perfect because I was just asking about the way you developed your art style. And I think that that's really meaningful that um, your response to that and the way you think about that is so connected with like the community of artists that you're connecting with online, and like the people who were inspired that you were inspired by, but also the people who are inspired by you, and the way that those are all interconnecting in a sort of a web. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
which to me is so beautiful and powerful and awesome. And that's a cool thing about social media also, is that it's especially apps like Instagram that are like visual based, or like
Mm.
image based or video based, whereas like you have access to like so many different niches of artists and styles, and I feel like you're exposed to so much more creativity, and creativity you've never necessarily seen before, like in museums or books and stuff like that. And I don't know, to me, it's like an endless source of inspiration, Instagram, because there are so many artists that are so talented. I don't know. I love the how we take from each other and we appropriate it. I think it's amazing. I think it's really cool.
Well, with that note of, like building and community, so what do you hope that people who read Naked: The Confessions of a Normal Woman, what do you hope that they take away from it at the end of the book?
I mean, I feel like it's a tough ask for me, but I what I hope is that I feel like sex can be, and is in some ways, like this very big scary monster, this very big subject, and I hope it can be more of like this silly, stupid thing that is not that serious. It can be, but like to me, sex is like very funny. And I think in my personal life, the times I've enjoyed sex the most were when I was like really having fun with it.
Mm.
And what's hard with that is that there's so much like outside pressure, which is so frustrating, because sex is so like intimate, but there's this insane pressure like crushing you and like being like how you should act, how you should be feeling, how like your body should look, what you should enjoy, what you shouldn't enjoy, how like your body should react, all that stuff. And I feel like if my book could maybe help ease that pressure a little bit,
Mm.
just kind of help see how silly that pressure is, and that most of the time that pressure is sort of imaginary, that like we put it on ourselves. I think that would be really, really amazing. Like I just I just want people to have fun reading my book, and like I've had I've had really great feedback. Um Something that people tell me a lot is that it I don't know how to translate it correctly. They say ça m'a fait du bien. which
Mm-hmm.
can be translated to like it make me feel, it's hard. That's like sort of tricky to translate.
Yeah, it
Make
does me good.
good.
It did me good to read it or something like that.
Oh,
It
yeah,
does.
it did me good. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's very well said. And or like that they felt very seen in
Mm-hmm.
the book, which made me really, really happy because that's a lot of the shame. Like one of the major themes of my book is shame, and most of my shame during my entire life came from feeling alone and
Mm.
not normal. So hearing that other people felt seen sort of makes me hope that it made them feel less alone in those experiences, and maybe take a little bit of that shame that they feel. And yeah, that's what I hope. I hope people find it funny too.
Well,
I think it's
I also like the way you put that so that the two are going hand in hand, because oftentimes we think about sort of maybe stories as either being serious and they're dealing with something really serious. It's a serious subject. We're going to deal with shame and sexuality and everything like that. Or there's this idea of dealing with something that's funny and it's just for fun, it's light, it's goofy. But I like the way that you position those two things as actually not even being two sides of the same coin, but being like just totally united. It's by laughing at something, by seeing how silly that this stuff is, that the reader might realize that they shouldn't be ashamed of what is going on with themselves, with their body, with their mind, and they can then hopefully be empowered by that.
I really hope so. That would be like the if people can feel empowered by my book, that's like I've done it. I made it.
Nice.
Fingers crossed.
Well, I think let's see, but I think it's going to happen. Um, is there what you mentioned your Instagram? What's the easiest way for people to find you?
My Instagram is basically my full name, so Éloïse Marseille. And if not, I also am a tattoo artist. So if you're interested in like a different facet of my art practice, that's Moo Tattoo Montreal. So Moo like the sound of a cow, dot tattoo dot mtl. And for comics though, it's better Eloise Marseille.
Perfect. And then your comic book, Naked, The Confessions of a Normal Woman, will be in stores on November 7th. So we're really excited about that. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. And I'm really, it's been a lot of fun doing a deep dive into your work, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes next.
Thank you, Francois. It was great talking with you.